This video is a video I never wanted to make, but I couldn't shake the feeling, and that's when I knew it was one I had to make. When things weren't adding up with the voting system and no one in the company could help me, where everything we tried was a dead end and it didn't lead to answers, that's when I really had to start digging deeper. And that's when I had to go all the way up to reach out to the CEO of Angel Studios. And I brought the receipts.
The Revelations, where the future is history.
You know, I really wrestled with the decision of even making this video or not. It's not an easy topic to talk about, and only after God kept bringing it up in my spirit and months of prayer did I finally agree to even do it. But even then, it took a lot of legal counsel to understand my rights, the contracts, and what I felt comfortable with sharing publicly, even just some of the most important parts from my story. And of course, there's no animosity towards Angel Studios directly. Really, through the process of going through this, ironically enough, I've gotten to know a few Angel Studios employees, and they've turned out to be some of the kindest, most awesome humans I've met in the industry. So needless to say, I have zero animosity or desire to pursue any legal action, take it personally, or anything like that. So take this as like a basic Yelp or Amazon review kind of video. Ultimately, I made this video in the hopes that other filmmakers and creatives could or can avoid the unfortunate thing that happened to me on my experience with Angel Studios just earlier this year. This comes from my personal experience with Angel Studios over right now what has been the past few months. And I've talked to other colleagues, like they've run into issues of their own, even some that personally took us aside, told us to be cautious working with them. But on the other hand, I personally know a major creator with a huge following that just got his project greenlit by the company, and it's airing right now. So everyone's experience can be different, but also going through my own experience and not having anyone to talk to that understood what I was going through, what I experienced, that in itself was a little unnerving. So the whole point of all of this video right here is to help any filmmakers and creatives out there to not be blindsided by their experience or to feel taken advantage of. If anything in their submission process just happens to look different than what they were packaged when they signed up, or if they didn't know maybe what they were signing up for. My family and I have been pretty avid supporters of Angel Studios for years now. Of course, way back to the start with the Chosen series, but even before that when they were VidAngel, and even before that when like Squatty Potty days. So we go back a long time supporting and being fans of this company and this family and everything, which is really why my personal experience recently with them was so shocking to us personally. This video is a video I never wanted to make, but I couldn't shake the feeling, and that's when I knew it was one I had to make. When things weren't adding up with the voting system and no one in the company could help me, where everything we tried was a dead end and it didn't lead to answers, that's when I really had to start digging deeper. And that's when I had to go all the way up to reach out to the CEO of Angel Studios. And I brought the receipts. Receipts in the form of screenshots, emails, telephone transcripts, etc. All throughout this process, at least what I am at liberty to share with you guys. I always want to be 100% transparent with my audience, so this is no different, because I know that sunlight is one of the greatest disinfectants. And when things are exposed to the light, the truth really shall set you free. As artists and filmmakers, we face so much rejection from major studios, small studios, all over the place. I've had several successes, and I've been blessed in my career to have been able to work for amazing companies and to be part of very talented teams. But I've also, another side of it, I've also been called to pursue a few of my own passion projects where it's essentially been all on my shoulders, just me in the trenches by myself. But just last year, I felt a shift. I felt God moving me to take one of my passion projects, a graphic novel series called The Revelations, that I started way back as a graphic novel in 2003. And then in 2018, he led me to reimagine, kind of rediscover that project. And then just this last year, he had me adapt it into an animated project. The series is called The Revelations, Trials and Tribulations. And I did a whole video about that crazy journey I was on with that project, if you want to check out that video. Here, or I'll link it. I had no clue how I was going to create it, who was going to be involved, or how it's going to be funded or even what studio I'd be working with. But that's exactly how God moved me to start the first graphic novel. And that all worked out way back when. There were a few connections I had with some notable film companies already from my contacts that have a great platform and fan base and support. But I figured with more of a fleshed out kind of animated scene for a pitch, that could be a path to open the door for the project eventually. So for several months, I started the work of adapting a graphic novel from the page to animation for the big screen. Since it was all on me, translating my character designs and page layouts from static to moving images, there was a ton of work to do. I adapted the manuscript to a screenplay and started researching digital tools to help do some of the heavy lifting on some of the animation side, since I had to create and illustrate so many scenes and characters from scratch and write at the same time. I did get some voiceover help for characters from my talented wife and kids, so that was pretty cool and helpful. Then a few months into production, my wife shared a video with me about Angel Studios, specifically about their guild and their torch submission process. As I mentioned, we were both very familiar with the company. Amazing releases like Sound of Freedom, their movie Sight, which a couple of our good friends actually were producers on, and of course, The Chosen, which my family has loved watching for years since it started way back in the beginning. I even created some original art for them a few years back, viral art that was used in their auction to raise funds for the show and to support. I'm still even in talks with them, working together on future seasons. But this was the first time that I really heard about the Angel submission process for filmmakers. And yes, they accepted animations, and yes, they even were accepting unfinished projects in pre-production, which was what I had been developing. So it seemed like it was a good match and a good fit and a great opportunity, possibly a great door for the project. Now, researching their process and watching videos of the Harmon brothers in interviews, the founders of Angel Studios, hearing them talk about the point of the company and how it was to provide a platform for filmmakers and to showcase their projects to their vast audience with their guild as a way to bypass mainstream gatekeepers in Hollywood. Believe me, my wife and I were very familiar with those gatekeepers. We've worked in the arts and entertainment space right here in LA, in the battleground, and we both have countless stories that we could share about all of our experiences here. That being said, so I prayed and I fasted to seek from the Lord if this was really where I should be, where I should be taking the project to Angel Studios. We really wanted to be sure, and my wife and I drew the same conclusion, and it was a resounding yes. There was no doubts that this was the next step that we were taking. All we knew was that I would be submitting my project. That didn't necessarily mean that it would be accepted or even be their next big animated release or anything like that. Just the simple act of being obedient and seeing where that went. That's all that God was really leading us to do at this point. I've learned this term, this phrase that always stands out to me, where when you get instructions from God, whatever it is, your responsibility to just show up and be there, and then he'll do the rest and he'll give you like next steps. So just the act of being obedient and seeing where it went was all that he was leading us to at that point. And this is something that you'll see me say a lot. Faith is rarely a clear and straight path. I've usually found that all we are allowed to see is just the next step up the ladder. There's enough light for us to take just that next step. And only after you take that next step, often do we gain understanding and the light reaches the next. So for this project, this was just the next step. So I wanted to be thorough and make sure all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. So after researching as much as I could about the submission process and the best ways to submit, I had a few great conversations with their customer service team. They even put me in contact directly with the project manager who's over all of the submissions, a person that I would later become very familiar with. But more on that later. Everything seemed to be going swimmingly well, even before my submission. This was like a few months before I even submitted the actual project. So with that in mind, I feel it important to share as much as I can about this process and sharing images and graphics and quotes for all of you watching this video right now, really so that you'll have further insight, a fuller picture, just what went on in my experience. I'm a visual learner. I know that for a lot of people, you can tell a story, but it's great to show not just for proof, but to fully paint the picture. Hence why I guess I'm an illustrator and I do graphic novels and stuff, because it's all image-based mostly. I know that that's important to do for you watching this video right now, to give you a fuller picture and what went on with my experience. However, for the sake of keeping certain parties and their identities private, some of the images and emails will be redacted, or even phone calls will be reenacted from the original transcripts, just to respect their private information. All right, that being said, I paid the $250 Torch submission fee. Really, if you think about it, a small price to be able to showcase your dream project in front of a massive, devoted community of creatives, moviegoers, and supporters. The guild had just reached 1 million members about a week before I submitted my project. Now, this is where the problems started. It was small at first, but it seemed to really snowball the further I went through the process. So the first issue I ran into was this list of stages of my submission. The first step was titled Guild Defenders. I never heard this term before, so I didn't know what it meant. Even with all the meticulous questions I asked beforehand about the submission process and how it would be shown to the guild and so on. Even still, my project manager never mentioned a defender stage that needed to be passed before the submission would even go or even be shown to the entire general guild at Angel Studios. I found it odd that they would omit this information because having direct access to a 1 million members strong audience in their guild honestly was a major driving force for our submission in the first place. One of the most profound things the founders of Angel Studios proclaimed about their company was really how unlike Hollywood they were, and how important it was that they didn't have gatekeepers. But this Defenders Guild felt strangely familiar to a form of gatekeeping that we all were far too familiar with. But on top of that, when I directly brought this up to the project manager and asked them, they never addressed why this information wasn't shared or why that extra step was added. And in any of the materials or emails or content online about the process, it was never mentioned beforehand. Not once, not in any part of the dialogue. So basically, in the contract, it mentions that the filmmakers, when they submit a project, it'll go through to the guild and be shown. There's a certain score that you have to reach, and there's details about the process, but they never mentioned an additional step that they added for my submission where it didn't go to the full guild. It went to a select group of undisclosed amount of people, and that group was the pathway or the filter that the project would go through before the guild would really see it. And that was something that wasn't discussed, and I even asked about it, so the fact that it never came up was kind of odd. But moving on from that, more about Guild Defenders. Because of friends and family members, just a handful, probably less than a dozen, were already Angel Studio subscribers and part of the guild. So when they found out about my project, they wanted to check it out, but no one could view it. As they started letting me know they couldn't view the project, so they needed to be a defender. I didn't know what defenders were. I didn't know why the projects had to go through an additional hurdle or step that was never explained to me that it would go through before reaching the guild. The project, while it was still alive and going through active voting, my wife and I did a bit of research about defenders and what that was and who were defenders and how you could even become one. We found out it was just like a little button you could toggle in the account settings. So if you were a guild member, you could just click that to become a guild defender. That's it, no experience needed. So just a few of those friends and family did end up clicking the box just so they could at least view the project. And then those members were finally able to view the project. Well, actually, only some of them, but more on that in a moment. But moving from the defenders issue, that was really just the first thing that seemed off, but there were more. There were many more. Once my project went live, I noticed that the voting process was very opaque, and it's really hard to tell how many votes were being counted and how their voting actually impacted the total project guild score. Instead of like a yes or no vote, they had, does it amplify light, and would you be disappointed kind of as a metric. It was a little confusing for voters at first, and it's unclear how the scores from that metric really affect the number, because members can give several answers to what they had seen with each category. Instead of like a clear up vote or down vote, there's varying degrees of like how you can answer that. So that's different than what I had seen in all of Angel Studios' searchable materials. Looking at this, it's unclear how the combination of these votes affect the total project score and what weight each category really holds. You know, several members even shared with us that they had frustration over these voting parameters, but that's just the ones who actually were able to vote. But some voters in our project didn't even get a chance to get this far in the voting process. I was contacted by 2 defenders that I knew personally who never even saw the correct project. There was an issue on the back end where there was an internal error that had a duplicate of my project, my film submission. Early on, before it posted and went live, they had me change a couple things in the video So when I did, they posted both versions of the project for some reason. So a certain amount of members weren't able to even see the real final project. They were sent to this older version. The votes didn't go anywhere. They didn't count to anything. So if someone watched that video and they voted on it, those are dead votes. They don't go towards the real project. They can't undo that. They can't find the new project. They were stuck in this limbo category. And it was something that the project manager mentioned that they would work on and that they were fixing it. But this didn't resolve the issue for me. Those votes were gone, and there was nothing that I could do with that information or that content. I don't know how many members that even happened to, because I also received comments from members I didn't know that said the same thing, where they were being sent to the wrong project and they were voting there and they couldn't see the real project or have their votes counted. So there's no way of really knowing just how many of those members were sent to the wrong project page and were prevented from casting a valid vote that would be counted. And what made it worse was these members couldn't even find the real project anywhere. It wasn't available like on the app. It wasn't searchable. It wasn't showing up in any of the new categories. They had like tabs for new torch projects to vote on. It wasn't in any of those listings. So I don't know how many votes would have gone anywhere because they couldn't even view the project. There was another issue with grayed out responses. For several of the members who were able to actually view the correct project, they confirmed with me that they did cast a vote and they left real responses. However, their votes weren't showing up. I showed like as a grayed out graphic. They did not appear to be counted anywhere. Since there isn't much transparency around the voting, it's unclear how many members were casting votes that were also grayed out internally that we couldn't see, since you don't have to leave a comment to cast a vote. So it's unclear how many members had the same issue and we just couldn't see it. The voting process on the project took a few days, and both my wife and I kept a watchful eye over the comments and the votes that came in, but also the current guild score. We both noticed that the score behaved kind of erratically at times, and the current guild score is basically the updated vote results for your campaign. The project needs to be above a certain percentage to pass the defenders to even make it to the guild audience. At least that is what happened in my case, which was quite different than what was promised in like the contract or in what we saw online from the different submission process videos.
To be fair, Hollywood is great at making movies, but it's the execs that are terrible at guessing what you want. But at Angel Studios, instead of trusting a few random dudes in Hollywood, we put our faith in thousands. When you subscribe to the Angel Guild, choosing the next hit show couldn't be easier. Just tap the guild icon, watch a short prototype video, and then either approve or reject it. It's as easy as a dating app.
Thankfully, my wife took some screenshots of the entire process, because one of the strangest things with the score was that the score rarely moved, but every time it got close to the mark, it would get close to it, then it would drop down again. Not necessarily odd in itself, except when a few of our supporters contacted us directly to let us know that they were finally able to view the project and to vote on it. It was right towards the end, and instead of it impacting the score positively, that appeared to bring the score down, and it dropped right when we received these votes. So it would sound like just a theory if it wasn't for something the project manager admitted to in an email response that I'll share a little bit later. While the project was still live and actively being voted on, I brought these concerns to the project manager in hopes to be addressed in time to actually fix these issues, to fix these glitches, to allow the project to have like a voting run where actually people are able to see it and to vote and it's just smooth. But this only seemed to make it worse. I only received late answers, some vague language, lack of solutions, and some practices that just brought up more questions. The project campaign launched on March 21st and it concluded on March 26th. So it was only up for about 6 days, but the follow-up and the fallout would take the better part of the next 3 weeks. There's a lot of back and forth with the company and the project manager. The issues that I brought up to my project manager during our campaign were never addressed while the campaign was still live. We only received a response after the campaign closed. I had to follow up and see if my correspondence were ever seen. And then these were the responses that came in. Oh, so this part was untrue. As shown earlier, there were people that I never knew or contacted that would only see the wrong project. They couldn't vote on the real project just based on the comments alone. It's unknown how many actually tried to vote on this that couldn't. It wasn't just people that I was sending links to, it was people who were randomly coming across the project, but they weren't shown the real project. So there is an admitted issue of valid votes that were not showing up or being counted, and it's mathematically impossible that this wasn't affecting the score. But this term, statistical significance, it is used a lot. I do speak on the phone later with someone at the company that is higher up, but they're from another department, and they do mention something to the effect of the way the voting process is run is somewhat their trade secret. It's likely it's something they don't want to divulge about their process. speaking with this person, they mentioned that I really had something with my project. Actually, the star score was really high for projects that were similar to it, and also the watch through, the retention rate was performing better than for most of the project that actually did get voted through. My watch through was doing better and outperforming even those videos. What did kind of bother me, rubbed me the wrong way, was in my experience, it felt a little bit like being brushed aside or being dismissed. The concerns that we had were valid. We had real points and real issues, and we brought the evidence of these things that were happening, anomalies, glitches, and really most of them were not getting addressed. I'm not even really upset that the project didn't pass this first round, because as I mentioned in the beginning, I didn't know the outcome that God even had in mind to move me to even do the submission to Angel Studios in the first place. Like, honestly, really, I was mostly upset because the process seemed a little imbalanced. It was revealing that there were major bugs in the system, in the format, or something worse even. But I couldn't really tell the cause of a lot of these things because there was such secrecy and opaqueness around the whole process. But I felt like if this was happening to my project, it was likely happening to other filmmakers and their projects as well. Especially with some of the comments that we were getting. Reading through the members' comments on our project, it seemed like it wasn't only happening to me. So I followed up with the project manager, like a whole outline, itemized list of all the problems that we encountered in the submission process. And these were kind of like here's all the things, like you see them, this has to be like something that you would want to fix. Like, this is your department, your teams, you guys can work on this, you're the ones who would do it. So these were kind of like the final two straws on the project and working with them. Here's the thing, I was very direct and specific, and I asked if we had any Angel Studio members that wanted to support our project, would they be allowed to, or would that even like negatively affect or impact the project or anything? And they said no. But even that being said beforehand, with their own words here in this later email, it appears that the score will be brought down if there is any sudden increase in votes. But like, what do you guys think? Spam the comments below about voting and say voting is either this up or this down. We would really love to hear from you guys and how this sounds from an outsider's perspective, because it really begs the question, how does the algorithm know what is a bump in the score or which votes to send out to other members to vote? Because does it know like who will vote the project back down, like using their own words, or is it just random? And I guess like with the way the correspondence with the project manager, how it ended, there was no like helpful solution or resolution at the end. It was admitted that there were internal issues that they needed to fix, but no acknowledgement that their fixes would be done in a manner that would benefit the project or me or anything like that. So it ending like that, I just couldn't let it go. Something stirred inside of me. If anybody knows me, like from my research, teaching, and apologetics background, I value truth and getting to the root of things. When the water is kind of muddled, that's like when I have to dig in deeper, because I'm trying to fight that much harder to unearth the actual truth. And when it comes to anything, that's always been a sticking point with me. Like, finding answers and truth is very vital. I think God made that part of me. That's a very core part. I will fight for truth. And in my experience going through the process, all signs pointed to this being a set of major correctable problems that for some reason were not getting fixed. So for the sake of both Angel Studios and future creatives that might pay hundreds of dollars to submit their dreams, I felt the urge to find out what was really going on. I'm resilient, and I have fought for many of my projects against opposition for 20 plus years. Other creatives, some starting out, or some maybe this is their last shot, they might not have the time, they might not have the resources or resolve to fight for theirs. Something like this could really be crippling for them, or like a death blow to their dreams. So I sat on this over the weekend and I prayed for guidance. Then, as the last ditch effort, my team went to work. This time it was a different kind of work. From the final email response, we gathered that the project manager did all that they were going to do at this point, but Angel Studios only has like a general customer service email, and that's all the correspondence they provide. And I tried several times to reach out to them, but they would always try to funnel me back to,
yeah, I'll give you one guess.
the project manager, the one I was already dealing with, and that was going nowhere. So my team scoured databases and our mutual contacts. Finally, we were able to find other employees at the company. I worked my way up, all the way up to the top, the CEO and the founders of Angel Studios. I figured if they didn't know about these issues with the torch submission process, they definitely needed to know. And it seemed like they would be the only ones able to fix it. Sadly, after emailing, texting, calling, and leaving voicemails for weeks,
the Google subscriber you have called is not available. Please leave a message after the tone.
I never received a response. However, I pivoted and I did start to get through to other higher ups, but they were over different departments internally with the company. Submissions wasn't necessarily their team, but when I was sharing my experience and going through the submission process, a few did show remorse and shared apologies with empathy over difficulties that the project had gone through, which was actually really refreshing. But even so, every single person that I talked to, they all said the same thing. The project manager X that I had already been working with was the only person, the only one that I could deal with for this. They were the only ones that could deal with it. They were the only ones that could handle these issues or talk to about the issue. Everybody apparently has to funnel through that same person. So that person was over it all. All questions would be funneled through them. And after a few days of being bounced around through different calls and messages, I would talk to different employees internally. One finally shared their thoughts on my experience, and they were super considerate. They asked probing questions about the submission, and it felt like they understood the project and the passion that me and my team have about it. And they even looked at the project. They even said,
"From my observation, clearly you have created something good. You are clearly separated from ones that are just not. But as we grow, and the more things that we get in, it's getting harder and harder to get through the guild."
It was a great call. We even prayed over each other at the end. It was an amazing call. This person was awesome. Even afterwards, they said that they would reach out to my project manager again, just to see if there was anything they can do, anything at all that might benefit the project or give another fair shake. Then after not hearing from my project manager for about 10 days, I received this email. Though I really wasn't excited about the notion of going through the heartache of a resubmission, it was something. But I had questions though, and I really needed to pray about this. So I asked follow-up questions about what hadn't been really resolved from before, and I was assured by the project manager that I wouldn't have those issues again. I was thinking we'll see. After praying about it for a couple of days and receiving some answers, we resubmitted. And what do you know? Surprisingly, the same issues. Yay! But also exciting new issues where the voting percentages actually went backwards, where it'd be at a certain percent, people were voting, and it said, just say 75%, and then people voted, and then it dropped back to 71%, the percentage of votes coming in. And that happened a few times during voting on the resubmission. I brought these issues up, but just like before, I didn't receive a response during the life of the campaign while voting was still happening, but instead, days later, after voting and the project was already ended and unsuccessful. And only after I followed up with a reminder email did I receive a response. In the response, another curious thing is it never clarified how many members are allowed to vote during this preliminary phase, like one of the other employees mentioned. By our estimation, in looking at the score meter and how it moved, the amount of comments and feedback we got, and the conversations with the employees on the back end, everything factored in to be low triple digits of members. Not quite the million member guild that we were sold on. But again, impossible to zero in on precisely how many were voting. What was more telling was line 4 about the percentage fluctuating up and down. They used the terminology confidence and less confident. They didn't clarify, but it was curious. Why would they be less confident on the score? The only members at this point allowed to see and vote were the ones that they decided to share it with, that they sent it to. No one that we knew was able to view or vote for this resubmission round. It was only their Defender Guild members that they sent to the project. So I don't know why their confidence in the votes would fluctuate. Those terminologies didn't really add up. The lack of transparency here was not only confusing, but brought the entire system for voting in question by a lot of the members. Again, a concern many of the members brought to us. In short, all of this elicited an unnecessary level of concern and doubt from fans and creatives that were submitting or would submit their project to this process. And this was the last exchange that I had with the project manager. It was a very familiar experience. There was no real resolution. The majority of confusion around the process was left unfixed and wasn't addressed. And we received no remorse or compassion about our experience or any hope that hey, I hope the project turns out with better results, or I wish you and the project well in the future. There was never an offer for a refund or any other way to make it right. From their perspective, in the end, everything was done right. So that's where I left it. Didn't really feel led to follow up again or reach out to anyone else internally. So I've sat with this for about 2 months. In the off chance that they might reach out again, or maybe one of the founders or the CEO would finally get back to me, that didn't seem to happen. But at the time, I did feel they were a little distracted and had a lot on their plate already, running a huge company, obviously, but especially with a big Easter or Resurrection Day release for their major animated film, The King of Kings, which did really well. And I took my family to go see it opening weekend. But it's possible they may have already been busy dealing with a legal issue with one of their main projects, which we're learning was also happening behind the scenes around the same time that I experienced my issue with them. So this is like a legal issue they have with another major project that they're releasing. And now even just today, I heard that with The Chosen, they have another legal issue with arbitration that just sided with The Chosen. So they have a lot of legal stuff going on with their properties and with their projects. So it's totally possible the bulk of their resources were focused on these bigger issues, and that things like my issue kind of fell through the cracks is not very comforting for all the work and time and the struggle that we were put through in this submission and all this process. But it's a possible reason, perhaps. So after sitting and praying over these many months, I was further compelled to finally make this video. So every filmmaker and creative out there with a dream project that they are considering submitting as a torch to first hear from another creative before they go into it. This was my experience. So I wanted to share it with potentially any other artists and filmmakers, because honestly, I would have loved to know half of this information before I actually submitted. Like, I don't regret submitting either time, but that's really because I knew that's what God wanted me to do. However, knowing the process a bit better, I would have maybe been better prepared. But I believe just now I'm starting to understand some of the why God had me submit my project. I really think in part it was for you, the person watching this video right now, because this is something that no one was talking about. I know I've searched the internet for it, but there was nothing out there when I started to do this video. Now I've been doing a little bit more research, and there's a channel that you could check out if you want to find some really good breaking news and good information about these kind of cases. He's a great guy. His channel is The Chosen Sleuth, and he breaks down a lot of these types of videos. That's not the main point of his channel, but he does some great commentary on some of these issues. If you're interested, you can check out his channel. He has a great channel over there. But in regards to my stuff with this video, this is just information about my experience. So take it for what you will. If it can help you in your process and how you handle your dream projects, wherever you take them, it doesn't have to be with Angel Studio, wherever you go, it's good to kind of keep these things in mind and know your rights and the process, and not be scared to question things and ask why. By no means is this a call to stop submitting or cancel Angel or anything like that. I'm not telling people not to submit their projects. I feel like there is already too much division in this world, in the arts and entertainment, especially with believers. We should be banding together, not being divided. But knowledge is power. And personally, this is knowledge that I would have loved to have had access to beforehand, before my own submission. Now that I'm putting out there, I'm sure others can benefit from this now as well. If you know any creators that could gain something from this video, please share it with them, because like the Bible says in Hosea, his people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And we don't want to be destroyed, nor do we want our dreams to be destroyed either. God-given dreams should not be destroyed. So since we're all about building supportive community here, if you are a creative, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you have run into any similar kinds of issues or experiences with your projects, trying to get them off the ground or taking them to the next step, wherever you've been trying to do that, like it doesn't have to be with this studio or this company, like wherever you've been trying to get your stuff out there, feel free to get engaged, be involved in the comment section. We want to be here, like I say all the time on this channel, we're about community. So we want to be here for each other, helping to lift one another up. So get down there in the comments. If you have questions, if you have your own thoughts, something that's uplifting or some encouragement, get in the comment section below. So all this talk about my animated project, I kind of get the sense that many of you have been saying like, what project? What project? If you do want to see the animated clip that started this whole fiasco, I've never shared it publicly, but if any of you are curious and you do want to see the 3-minute short opening for my animated film, The Revelations, Trials and Tribulation, go ahead and spam the comment section with the word animation below if you want to check it out. If enough of you actually are interested, we'll post it on here and it'll be one of our next videos, and you guys can let us know what you think about it. We would love for you to check it out and to hear what our community actually thinks about the project. Because even with the voting on Angel Studios going the way it went, there were plenty of new fans of the project that left very encouraging comments for us. And personally, that really meant a lot to us. That meant a lot to me. Really, like you truly have no idea. Those people on there, people I didn't even know, who never seen the project, appreciate all of their support and them actually understanding the project and wanting to see it be like a feature film. So that was very encouraging. Like, you truly have no idea how encouraging. The revelation has been a dream of mine for years. Have you ever had a dream where you found yourself stuck and unsure if you should give up or risk it all and keep going? This is a video for you. In it, I face this question head on with decades of experience in successes and failures to back it up. So go ahead and check it out before the screen ends, before the video ends, towards 2 minutes.